Hello everyone, and welcome to the Acropolis collectible card game. So, a bit of background as I begin will hopefully be a long-running video series about my custom card game Acropolis. So, over the past year or so, I'm brewing this card game called Acropolis, and I've created all kinds of cards. At this point, I think 175 all told, and I was perusing the internet looking for ways to advertise the game, basically get it out there since I put in a lot of man hours. I noticed that there's a very cool group of people, a very groovy community of collectible custom card game players on the internet. And so I figured the best thing to do was enter the fray, create my own channel, create some awareness, because there's some really cool games out there, and I like to think that mine has some nifty stuff going on itself. So without further ado, I'm going to start to just delve into sort of my process of creating cards, my thinking behind card designs, and if I get positive feedback, I'll start to put up some more videos, something along the lines of maybe spoilers for the next set, which is currently in production. Hopefully get into the rules behind the game, how it works. I'll also be linking to a complete card gallery and card rules on my site. But in the meantime, again, I just wanted to create some exposure for the game, go through some of the cards I think are particularly interesting from the most recent set, and just give people a taste of what the game's about, see if there is some interest out there. And so without further ado, I figured I'd just delve right into what I've been working on. So this is called Game of Memories, this set. This is the third expansion upon the base set. The base set is 100 cards, and then each subsequent expansion has been 25 cards. So this is the most recent 25 card expansion called Game of Memories, and I'll go over the lore of the game in depth in other videos again if this really takes off. But in the meantime, just to catch people up to speed, the idea behind the lore here is that one of the primary antagonists of the game is this character called Lilith, this primordial being that has existed since essentially the concoction of the universe itself, and so she's been around and she has been unleashed in the present. But this set does something different. This is what you call a flashback set. So we're going all the way back to kind of the dawn of civilization, the dawn of man, and back when Lilith is much younger and she is creating the world for the first time, and she is an unexperienced creator. She is psychologically just a child, but has all the power of a god to create things as she sees fit. So the lore here is that she's spending her time with a human artist who is incredibly creative, who makes these amazing landscape paintings, and she's learning from him essentially how to create responsibly, because creation, it turns out, creating the universe from scratch is no easy feat. Meanwhile, though, some of her creations, who call themselves the House of Cards, have come together and demanded that they be in charge of her power. And their reasoning is that she's but a child and that this is too much power for her to control, and she agrees that she will let them each challenge her to a series of games, since a one-on-one fight would be unfair since she's an all-powerful being. And if she loses any of these games, then she'll let them essentially decide what's to be done with their power. So here we have Lilith, Supreme Game Master. So Game Master is actually an archetype in this game. For those unfamiliar with what an archetype is essentially a series of cards that have a synergistic relationship with each other. And so this is one of the main cards for the archetype. In the game, there are 4 different factions or colors. There's red, green, purple, and blue. And gold cards are of all colors. So this is a gold card, and there's usually 1 gold card a set. Usually these are marquee cards of the set, important cards story-wise, usually main characters. And so here's one of our main characters, Lilith, Supreme Game Master. And so the idea here is ultimately she does emerge victorious from her series of games, and this card reflects her power. So, literally speaking, she's not very powerful. Even though you may not know the rules of the game, you can clearly see that she costs 1, that's a little black number in the upper left-hand corner, and then she only has 1 power. The power numbers are the 2 little red numbers in scrolls. So in that sense, she's not very powerful, but she has this keyword called Lurk. So Lurk is this mechanic that when you have other units out, the unit with Lurk cannot be attacked. Essentially, it does what the name suggests. It gets to lurk behind your other units. And then she has this power that says once per turn, you may pay 3. And I'll get into it in a sec, but you have this resource called Workers in this game. Workers are essentially, if you want to think in magic terms, your mana, or the same with Hearthstone. Those are basically your mana, they're your resource, and you can acquire one each turn. Again, I'll go over more of this in depth once I make a rules video. But in the meantime, the general idea here is that you can pay 3 and destroy one of your units to summon a Game Master unit from your deck. So flavor-wise, the idea behind this card is that she created the Game Masters in the first place, so it makes sense that she is able to basically bring them into being. But she also has the power to simultaneously create things, but also destroy. Notice how as a cost for this effect, you have to destroy one of your units. And so the idea here was her effect should be powerful, and should also reflect the duality of her power. That she can both create and destroy, that she is an all-powerful being within this universe. So this is designed to be a fairly powerful card, I would say. Any card that lets you bring cards out of your deck directly tends to be pretty effective. Those who have played card games are probably aware of this fact. So the idea is she is sort of the boss monster for the archetype of Game Master. However, I wanted to make the boss monster for actually the first archetype in the game something more interesting than just a big creature. So in fact, I made her a small one. You'll notice that she only costs 1, she doesn't have much power, but one that is still incredibly powerful, one that has, based on lore, the power of creation. And so that's Lilith. She's essentially the tutor of the archetype. She lets you search out your various game masters, and is, I think, an incredibly powerful card, and an incredibly important one flavor-wise, and a card where I quite like the art. I went for some complementary contrasting colors. So design-wise, I'm very happy with, and I think is quite powerful. Now, continuing in this line of cards I'm happy with the design of, we have another Game Master here. This one is called Game Master Lady Luck. So the Game Masters come in essentially 2 categories. Each of them is the master of their own game that they challenge Lilith to. And the games come in 2 categories. They are games of chance and games of skill. And you'll notice that, for instance, here, Lady Luck's dress is a roulette wheel, and you see poker chips all around her. And the idea behind those that revolve around games of luck, like poker, like roulette, is that they're fickle. The idea behind that is Lady Luck is fickle. And you can see this card is quite literally 2-faced. Actually, I think we have maybe 5 or 6 faces in there. It's hard to tell exactly. But the idea is a lot of the Game Masters, because luck is fickle, are themselves fairly fickle. And so you see this reflected in her ability, which is every one time she dies, she goes the other player's side of the field. So design-wise, this is probably one of my favorite cards of the set. I think it's a lot of fun. It's essentially an unkillable threat. Now, there are ways to get rid of it permanently, but it's very difficult. And the idea is it keeps basically bouncing back and forth between each player's field. It's something of a fair weather friend. However, like with most quote-unquote equivalent cards that help both you and your opponents, the idea is you'll get the most out of this. So the first thing is every time it gets summoned, for both you and your opponent, the player it gets summoned for can discard a Game Master to draw a card. Now this is useful for a few reasons. One, you may not need the Game Master in your hand at that given time, so it may be a good thing to discard it and try and find something better. But the second bonus here is that a lot of the Game Masters, especially the ones based on games of skill, can use their abilities when they're in the graveyard, once you've discarded them. Also, a lot of them require you to sacrifice another Game Master. So what's nice about this is you can keep sacrificing this and then getting it back again and again, because every time it dies, it goes to your opponent's side of the field, then you can kill it, get it back, and use it to summon yet another Game Master. So the idea behind this card is it's a card that provides you some attrition. It's a card that will hopefully never go away the entire game, and gives you a way to keep sacrificing something that you can use to get back your Game Masters. Also, it lets you discard your Game Masters to get them in the grave and draw more cards. And the idea of this is potentially an important engine piece that I think is potentially quite interesting. So moving on to some other cards here, we have one of the key cards in the Game Master archetype, Game Master Crazy Diamond. As I previously mentioned, it's important to have your Game Masters in your grave, and we'll see some of those grave-dependent Game Masters very soon here. What Crazy Diamond lets you do is it lets you summon a game, or rather send Game Masters directly from your deck to your grave. However, your opponent can then send any unit from their deck to their grave. Now, you'll notice in this game that there are a lot of graveyard-dependent effects, a lot of things you can use in the graveyard, so this is a card where you're gaining an advantage, but so is your opponents. Now, the idea behind this, as you can see, is he's themed around essentially a slot machine. That's why he has the number 777 tattooed on his stomach. And the idea here is if you think about a slot machine, how often in the movies you're going for 3 sevens, it'll go 7, 7, and then the last number will be, say, a chair or something, that you'll come so close to getting 3 of the same in a row, but fail. So that's the idea behind Game Master Crazy Diamond, is the first 2 units get sent from your deck to your grave, which is good, but then the third one goes from your opponent's grave to deck to their grave, which is not so good. So the idea is this is incredibly powerful in effect. It lets you get 2 cards from your deck into the graveyard where you can hopefully play them from, but with a minor drawback. Still, I would say this is one of the important engine pieces to the deck, and definitely a critical card if you want to adopt a Game Master strategy. Now next here, we have this big guy, Game Master Jason, Breaker of Boards. As you can see, he looks quite colossal, and he has a whopping 4 power, which is not too shabby. Also, an incredibly potent summon effect, which is Destroy a Unit. It's pretty simple, but I think most can recognize, even those who don't fully understand how the game works, that's pretty powerful. He comes out and he destroys something, no questions asked. And you see now why the grave is important. You can destroy one of your own Game Masters and pay 3 in order to summon it from the grave. Now, this is sort of a similar effect to what Lilith had. Again, paying resources, destroying your own Game Masters, and getting them back, which is something of a sub-theme of the archetype. And what's so powerful here is that, say you have a Game Master Lady Luck, if she doesn't go away, if your opponent doesn't do anything about that, you can keep bringing him back over and over again. You bring back Jason, your opponent eventually destroys him, and then you just bring him back again, over and over again. And every time you do, he takes something with him. And so this is just a brief introduction to some of the card design, some of my thinking behind the game, and some of what you can expect from Acropolis. So if you have any interest in the game, please make that fact clear. Like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And let me know what aspects you would like to see. Again, that can be game rules, that can be an overview of various sets, that can be me talking about card design. Now, the art is not necessarily the highest caliber. I'm more interested in game design and card design than I am art, unlike a lot of custom CCGs. However, if you want to see speed draws, I suppose, or something of that sort, let me know. I'm a fairly flexible fellow, whatever folks are interested in seeing. But yeah, if you have any interest in anything at all, please make that clear. And hopefully this will be the first of many videos. Thank you.